If this is one of the opportunities this judgment opens up, is it an opportunity that the RSS and the VHP would be inclined towards? An attempt at reconciliation whilst the Supreme Court adjudicates the matter?
This RSS Sarasanga Chalak, he has in so many words said it today in his statement that we should all accept this verdict. It is not to be seen as a victory or defeat of one or the other, and now from here we should move on, forget the past and start a new beginning. So towards this new beginning, we can always sit together and talk.
I'll come back to you in a moment. Let me go back first to Mr. Digvijay Singh. Mr. Digvijay Singh, we've got through today. We've responded maturely, and I believe that and hope that this will be the continuous response of the Indian people. What would, as a politician, your advice be to the print, to television, to the newspapers? Because in a sense, how people continue to behave and respond will be very much determined by discussion and television and the print. What's your advice to them?
Well, first of all, I would like to compliment the media, print and the electronic media, the way they have sort of spread the message of unity, togetherness and the Indian first theme. I think this is a great beginning, and I think this should be followed to its logical end. Ultimately, what you pointed out is quite correct. The younger generation feels, let's get on. The issues are of employment, education, health, infrastructure. Let's work on them rather than go back to the history.
Soli Sorabjee, this issue, when it goes to the Supreme Court, will once again achieve a contentious dimension. That's inherent in any case being fought in a court. Two quick questions. Is there any advice you would give the lawyers not to vitiate the mood of reconciliation set by the Allahabad High Court, or is that impossible to do?
No. Not at all impossible as far as lawyers are concerned. The advice is more likely to be given to political leaders and political parties. But I'm sure they will also not vitiate the atmosphere. And what's more, I think we have gone on to this, initiate the process. Maybe informal. Though our friend said formal after the Supreme Court judgment, why not start now? See what happens. The right mood may be set. Nothing is lost in trying it. If you say informal, that's the achievement, that's the Allahabad High Court judgment has given you that opening.
Okay.
Seize that opportunity.
Don't go away. I want to put that thought that you've just raised, Soli, to Yashwant Sinha.
But I have to go now.
Mr. Sinha, you very much feel that this is a good, concrete step forward. Would you take that advice from Soli Sorabjee, take the initiative, start a reconciliation process now?
No, let's look at it slightly differently. I think we have talked a lot about reconciliation in this program. There are parties to the legal dispute which is going on where the Allahabad High Court has given a verdict. And then there is a wider world outside. There are Hindu organizations, there are Muslim organizations, there are political parties, there are governments. Now, when you are talking of reconciliation, what kind of reconciliation? I mean, suppose the political parties were to come to a decision or a conclusion. Will the litigants accept that judgment of the political parties? I'm not so sure. So therefore, we have wasted 6 decades in trying to arrive at a solution through the executive or the political process. We have failed. And now we have a judicial opening. I would very strongly suggest that we should pursue this further. Every party concerned should tell the Supreme Court that they should take the shortest possible time in disposing of any appeal which might be made to the Supreme Court in this case, so that the issue is settled once and for all. And let me tell you, Karan, give you an example. A very contentious issue which arose in independent India was the issue of reservation. And didn't the final judgment come from the Supreme Court? Didn't they say that it can't be more than 50%? And didn't the political establishment and everybody else ultimately accept it? And didn't that settle the issue? So if you want to have a real settlement of that issue, then it should be done by the Supreme Court, and until then there is no point in trying to have formal, informal processes for reconciliation.
Very quickly, before I go to Sitaram Yechury, a quick question to you, Soli Sorabjee. How long will an appeal to the Supreme Court take? Are we talking of months, years, decades?
Record has to be transmitted to the Supreme Court. It's a heavy, voluminous record that has to reach. Papers have to be prepared. It can't take less than a year for it to reach ripe for hearing. Once it reaches hearing, of course, it disposes of on a day-to-day basis, and I think it will be disposed of within 2 weeks or 3 weeks thereafter.
So in other words, you're saying that within, say, 15, 16 months, the Supreme Court can give a final verdict. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, that's the expectation.
Sitaram Yechury, in that interim, between now and say that outer limit of 16 months, assuming the analysis from Soli Sorabjee is one that you agree with, what would be your advice to the litigants?
You see, the point here, Karan, what we must understand is, yes, reconciliation was something that was tried in these 6 decades, and like everybody in this panel also agrees, and we have failed in it. Because remember, reconciliation is always accompanied by its twin expression, which is truth. Truth and reconciliation go together. And if the truth is not accepted, the truth is that the Babri Masjid was demolished. And the earlier truth, if you cannot establish that, then resolution, reconciliation always fails. But then the second aspect comes in. Now we have to look ahead rather than solving issues of the past or settling scores of history. The issue is that the future of building a better India. I think that must take up our energies.
Okay.
And I don't think they should be allowed to be frittered away in these matters. If it works out, good, or let us wait for the Supreme Court verdict, which all of us agree will have to be accepted by all.
Okay, let's pick up on one of the thoughts that was there in Sitaram Yechury's answer. Reconciliation is dependent upon the acceptance of truth. In your eyes, and I'm coming back to a contentious issue, but it is the critical issue. How much of the truth was established by the Allahabad High Court judgment today?
Well, unless I read the whole judgment, I can't really make it out, because then there are diverse opinions there.
But do you accept the Ram Janmasthan as truth?
No, from my knowledge that I have, in the case that I have pleaded, that there is a Ram Janmasthan Mandir nearby. How can this be a Ram Janmasthan?
What about the point about that this is not a legitimate
mosque? The point
mosque?
that I wanted to make was something else.
What about the fact that this is not a legitimate mosque? Do you accept that as truth?
If some place has stood the test of time for 500 years, how can any judge or a set of judges by a dash of pen declare that it does not exist? But I am still bound as a loyal citizen, bound to the rule of law. I still accept the final judicial verdict.
Whenever it comes.
If Ram has withstood the test of time for 5,000 years, I think even that also is a truth. So the question is, who is to interpret what is truth and
we've
what
got
is
just
not truth?
literally 1 minute left. If that, I want to go back to what you just heard from Mr. Syed Shahabuddin. How can a set of judges comment on issues of faith or decide whether a mosque that has stood, let me finish, a mosque which has stood for 450 years is suddenly deemed not to be a mosque? Isn't that the core of the problem? That despite all the attempt in this judgment to find ways of reconciliation, the old divisions and boundaries, the old questions and doubts remain.
No, the entire idea of reconciliation revolves around these facts. And if these facts are to be accepted, I think two things have to be kept out of this discussion.
Very quickly.
One is the entire spectrum and the glare of the media,
and number two,
politicians.
And number two, and the politicians. Yes. I think that is a note on which we can perhaps all agree. Sorry?
No politicians.
No politicians. All right. We have in studio suddenly at this critical moment agreement between the two who represent contending sides. Keep the politicians out of it. They also suggested keep the media out of it. On that note, we come to the end of this particular show. Smiling as Mr. Shahabuddin says, keep the media in. My thanks to all my guests for joining me, and if you have been watching, many thanks indeed. Goodbye. Good night.